So here's the concept I've come up with called dynamic healing. So when your stresses overwhelm your coping capacity or your nervous system, your body goes into fight or flight. That's what it's supposed to do because your stresses are saying danger. Your body, your brain is absorbing all the input, and you develop symptoms based on your body's physiology. So what happens is that you call it stresses. I'm going to use the word threat instead of the word stress. But stress isn't the problem as much as the physiological response to the stress. So the physiology is fight or flight. You're consuming resources. Your glucose levels are up because of cortisol. And you're robbing glucose from your brain cells, from your tendons, your ligaments. You're breaking down your body. So you have early degeneration. You have inflammation of the brain. And what I hadn't remembered from medical school, which now seems painfully obvious to me, is that fight or flight response includes the immune system. So what happens is that we need fight or flight to survive, that we would not be here. So fight or flight is a gift. And so the problem is when it is sustained, it starts destroying your own tissues. So it turns out that all chronic disease, and this is what we've been finding out the last 5 years. When I say been finding out, it's actually been in the literature for over 30 years, that the neuroscience is extremely deep, that social factors affect your immune system. So the number one factor, so it's chronic stress is the problem. In other words, sustained exposure to threat physiology, I'm going to call it threat physiology, is the problem. So with dynamic healing, you have your stresses or circumstances and your coping skills that create symptoms. Well, in medicine, we're treating just the symptoms, right? So we haven't done anything. We've treated the symptoms, which work a little bit, but you're going home to do a difficult job or an abusive spouse or whatever, that's your stresses. In medicine now, we don't have time to talk to our patients, so we don't know your circumstances. We don't know you as a person, so we don't know your coping skills. And so you're in threat physiology, we treat symptoms, and the problem keeps going. So it turns out that chronic stress, it turns out that anxiety, depression, bipolar, obsessive compulsive disorder, and schizophrenia, by the way, are inflammatory disorders. It also turns out that Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cardiac disease, peripheral vascular disease, hypertension, obesity are all inflammatory disorders. Well, we also know that probably you take autoimmune disorders, which are clearly inflammatory, but also cancer, et cetera, are all from a compromised immune system. So the key is there's a bunch of ways of attacking the problem. So with dynamic healing, you get to understand the person's stresses. And I can't solve your stresses, but I can at least acknowledge that they're there. And then we can give you tools to train your brain to actually process stress differently, because you can't avoid stress. That's not life. And then with your nervous system, you can increase the resiliency of it. So if your nervous system can be either calm or hyperactive, if your nervous system is hyperactive, it takes less stress to set off that fight or flight response. So remember, the main goal I would like to give the audience today is that as you calm down the body's physiology, symptoms resolve. So you want to minimize your time in fight or flight. That's the essence of the solution. And you want to maximize your time in safety. And of course, most of the time we're in between. Where's energy in, energy out. And the term for that is called homeostasis, where you're just driving your car down the freeway in fifth gear, just cruising along. So it's energy in, energy out. But in fight or flight, you're consuming resources. You cannot heal in fight or flight. Cannot do it, right? By definition. So then when it's sustained, people get sick.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you just saw, why not subscribe? Here's a link to do that. And if you'd like to watch the full interview, you can find it at chrisbeatcancer.com. There's a link to it in the description right below this video.